Welcome. You're listening to The Aligned Self, Conversations in Creating a Conscious and Abundant Life. This is Daniel Denovi. I'll be your guide and host. Let's see just where we can take this. Hello, friend, and welcome back to the conversation. Today, I think I'm going to talk about something big, and if you get this, it's going to change everything. And I mean everything. Now, when I say get this, I want you to arrive eventually at a knowing, not just an understanding. Most of us understand this. And if you've been a long-time listener, this is not something that's really new, because it is a thread that's been interwoven into every episode I've done. But I don't think I've actually come out and actually said it so directly. And today I'm going to be very direct about this concept. And so here's the good news. If you really get this, you don't need to listen to another word I say. This is your last episode of The Aligned Self, because this is the sum total of all I know. Now, most of you listen to this, most of you seek information, most of you want to master yourself in order to improve your life. And here's the sad truth. Most people do not do the work. They just don't do the work. They don't dive deep enough. They want the quick answer. They want the hack. They want something simple that they can put in place. Well, it's not necessarily simple to transform your life. Change, like a lot of people change is inevitable. You could basically do nothing consciously and you will change over time just out of reacting to society, to circumstance, to other people's actions. You almost cannot exist in life in a static fashion without changing. Life is dynamic. The universe is dynamic, meaning that there's a constant and never-ending exchange of atoms, ions, energy. It's inevitable that you will change. But will you transform? Well, what's the difference? Transformation is jumping a level. It's like immediately going from here to 5 levels up. It is stepping into a whole new reality, a whole new perspective, a whole new way of understanding the world. And like I said, change is inevitable. It's just going to happen as being an organism in interacting on the physical plane. Now, here's the fact of the matter. Even though change is inevitable, it's going to happen. More than likely, you're not going to change in a way that you really want to. It's not going to be by design, but rather by default. Now, every now and then, the universe will step in and assist you in a transformation. It'll be a wake-up call, a transformational event. And truth be said, these events are not typically comfortable. Because your thinking yet hasn't evolved, you have mindsets and paradigms and different ways of thinking that are habitual in nature. And there's a certain amount of roughness, necessary roughness, as you transition to a new way of being. Now, on the other hand, a self-imposed transformation is still somewhat uncomfortable. It's like going to the gym and working out. To really transform your body, you need to kind of push the limits of the known, push the limits of what's comfortable in order for you to grow, in order for you to change your body in a dynamic way. And your body will adapt. It will change. So, are you ready? Are you ready? Here's the concept that will transform your life. Here it is. You live your whole life in your head. Let me say that again for emphasis. You live your whole life in your head. You cannot get outside of your thinking. You cannot get outside of your head. No matter what happens on the outside, in reality, quote unquote, out there, you interpret it, you interpolate it, you repackage it in your head. So no matter what happens out there, you have your own perception or perspective on what happened. And that's a choice. That's probably the second truth in this. You live your whole life in your head, and you are responsible. You're responsible for your thoughts. You're responsible for your perceptions. Most people, though, live on automatic. They default to their programming, which in most cases has not been that stellar. But for better or worse, the way most people live their life is that the world that they've come to know as the world is their reality. They think that's the truth. This is the way it is. This is how it goes. But the truth is, it's just a play of consciousness. You live your whole life in your head. So every emotion, every upset, every victory has been perceived by you. You've chosen it as just being the way it is. Because, put simply, all you know is all you know. What you don't know, you don't know. You don't know it. That may sound cute, that may sound trite, but it is so profound when you really get it. All you know is all you know. And we tend to take everything out there and fit it into what our current knowing is in order to make sense of it. We acquiesce to the programming. And when I say programming, you learned how to be who you are. You learned how to interact in the world. It's been a learning experience. And you might say, well, I didn't really choose my programming. I had parents that were, or let's say a living situation growing up that was less than ideal, that was traumatic, it was debilitating, it was disempowering. And this might piss some people off. The only thing I can respond to that, well, yeah, okay, what are you going to do about it? And here's the higher consciousness level perspective. At some level, you chose to believe the circumstances that you grew up in were definitive. Certainly they did influence you. But the moment you get to realize that you are a product of your programming, a product of your upbringing, and that you didn't necessarily choose it then, you now are empowered to choose it today. And this could be said that this is the spiritual adventure. This is actually the adventure of being human. On how do you begin choosing your experience of life, independent of your programming, independent of your upbringing. Because here's the rub. We have a brain, and once the programming goes in, we tend to lean into that as a bias, as a preferred way of doing it. Whether you're right hand or left hand, we also have a preferred way of thinking, a preferred perspective, even a preferred modality, such as vision, auditory, kinesthetic, or sensation, as a way of taking in information. There's visual learnings, auditory learners, and kinesthetic or experiential learners. And by and large, you learned by observing the adults in the room. And this is also part of the conundrum in being human. As a child, the way we're designed as an organism, for the most part, from 0 to 13, 15 years of age, we are most often in a hypnagogic state. We are in trance because it is a preferred way of learning. We learn a lot of things by osmosis. We just absorb the energy in the room. We absorb criteria. We more than likely respond in anger to challenges or upsets the way our parents did because we just learned it. Doesn't mean that it was effective. Doesn't mean it was wrong. It's just that's the way it was. And in lieu of a better program, you default to your programming. Now, I've been a coach for over 30 years, and if you look also at all the self-help books and all the information out there, there's a great deal of time spent on trying to undo the learning that occurred at an earlier age. That process, going step by step, is change. It's not transformation. Every now and then you'll encounter an idea that transforms everything and transforms your perspective. And hopefully today, this idea that you live your whole life in your head and that you are responsible to choose your thoughts. You can choose the paradigms, you can choose the beliefs, you can choose every aspect of your life. Now, with that said, it means that you cannot blame anybody else. And I've said this before, you can either tell the story of your trauma, of your unfolding, of your undoing, or you can tell the story of your healing or of your growth. We cannot tell both, so we pick one or the other, and which story we tell will determine our experience of life. At any given moment, you have the ability to transform your life. But why do we show up in this moment or the next moment essentially the same way that we were 5 moments ago? Well, because we basically take the past and we repackage it and push it into the future. Why? Because all you know is all you know. And so since that worked yesterday, we think, well, we might as well try it again. But what if I told you that you could literally transform your life? You could be anything that you want, anybody that you want. Every aspect of your persona, every aspect of your being could be recreated. Most people don't have the skill set. They don't have the software. I know earlier in life, I certainly did not have the software. When I was 13, I did teach myself self-hypnosis, and that did a lot. It actually helped me create a relationship with my other-than-conscious mind. Most people don't have a relationship with their other than conscious mind. They have these actions and they relegate it to their subconscious and they say, oh, that's a subconscious belief, as if it's down in the basement, as if it's somewhere else. But when you have a relationship with your subconscious mind, once you're aware that you have a subconscious belief, you can change it because it's no longer subconscious. It's now in your consciousness, and then you can choose it or not choose it. But most people say, well, I'm not going to take that responsibility. But once you have the tools and you recognize that something isn't working, you can immediately change it if you have the tools. Now, the hardest part of that is that other people remember you being a particular way, and they recreate you because they're locked into their own perception of you, just as you're locked into your own perceptions of other people because you live your whole life in your head. So however somebody else is out in the world in your relationship, you're creating them as that way. It's not necessarily the truth. Might be some verifiable information to be true, but however they're showing up for you is how you're choosing to perceive them. And so for me, oftentimes over the years, because I can transform so quickly, is that other people have a hard time adapting to the idea that that was an old you yesterday or last week or this morning, and that you've already transformed, you've already changed it. And the reason it's hard for them to conceive of it is because they don't believe that transformation can occur quickly. Most people are caught up in the idea that change happens slowly over time. Can't just change like that, can you? Well, I didn't think so myself until I was 28. And I had come to a point in my life when I realized that I was intently taking problems or situations or challenges from the past and just putting them in the future. I wasn't really making any progress. And so in that moment of frustration, I declared a revolution for my life. I was going to change everything, and I invited the universe to participate. Now, I have to admit that I wasn't that attached to all the structures in my life, and thank goodness, because everything transformed. My relationships, my location, my career, everything transformed that year. But I was ready. And one of the things that I attracted to me was a new discipline, a new way of thinking about the mind, and that was Neuro-linguistic Programming. When I first read about it in Psychology Today, I said, that's it. That's what I want to learn. I'm going to learn that. And I actually looked in the back of that Psychology Today, and there was a little classified ad for a training. Now, I realize some of you don't understand what a classified ad is. You know, this wasn't a full page. It wasn't video. It wasn't a website. It was a little 1/2 inch by 1.5 inch ad. A few words. Become a practitioner in neuro-linguistic programming. 21-day training, last 2 weeks of July, first week of August, Princeton, New Jersey. Without hesitation, I picked up the phone, I gave them my credit card, and I said, I'm in. The receptionist said, do you want to talk to the instructor? I said, no, I'm in. I'll be there. And I have to tell you, I had no idea how I was going to really use the information, how I was going to use this certification. I just knew that I wanted to master my mind. I wanted to be in the driver's seat. I wanted to dictate what the programming was. And I saw this as the most viable avenue for me. And I was absolutely right. It transformed my life in ways that I could not have conceived of on the front end of it. Because, remember, all you know is all you know. And at that time, I did not know what was truly possible when I began running my brain. When I began being in the driver's seat and actually choosing how I wanted to think, choosing how I wanted to view the world, interact with the world. Put simply, NLP is a collection of tools in a toolbox that allows you to change your life for yourself. And most accurately, it changes how we process a thought. It doesn't necessarily change the content of our thinking. But when we change how we process a thought, it changes everything. The other thing that NLP presented to me was a way to ask empowering questions. The quality of your life, or the quality of your thinking more accurately, the quality of your thinking is given by the quality of your questions. The other thing that NLP did for me in learning it is I had a set of tools in order to question and challenge how I was distorting, generalizing, and deleting information about reality. And in recovering that lost information, and I'll tell you in a moment why it was lost, but in recovering it, it gave me a greater conscious awareness of my participation in the universe. Now, the reason we delete, distort, and generalize information is because there's a lot of data out there in the real world. And so when we repackage it and put it in our head, we delete stuff, we distort it, and we generalize, or we combine concepts in order to make it all fit, to make it understandable from our current level of knowing. And in that process, well, we don't necessarily have all the facts. But this process of questioning, of challenging these different aspects of mind, my different thoughts, my beliefs, gave me better management, better control, better power over my internal world. The other aspect that completely opened up that I had no idea was going to open up, I had no idea because this was off my radar. And again, all you know is all you know. I didn't realize that I was not necessarily experientially participating in life. I wasn't feeling all the things that I could feel about being human. For one, I did not have the vernacular. I did not have the vocabulary in talking about it. And unless you can actually verbalize it, conceptualize it, create it as a distinction, distinct from your experience, it tends to be relegated to your unconscious mind because your conscious mind does not have the capacity to process the thought. And this is where I'm going to bring in Jung. Carl Jung, Austrian psychoanalyst. He said something about the unconscious mind, and that is our quote for the day. Since this is Quotable Monday, I wanted to put a quote in there to really drive it home. And I realized that this is actually the driving force in our human adventure, the spiritual adventure. Jung said, until you bring the unconscious into consciousness, your unconscious will control you, and you will call it fate. This journey of bringing the unconscious into consciousness is the whole spiritual adventure of conscious or increasing your conscious awareness. And once you become aware of something that's occurring at the other than conscious or unconscious level, then you can either choose it to keep it or to release it. But until then, you're essentially a slave to your programming. You may have heard me say, if you've listened to me before, that who you come to know yourself to be is simply a collection of knee-jerk, habitually learned responses that you've adopted over the years in order to survive childhood with the least amount of pain and with some pleasure. Most of you have not chosen your beliefs. You've not chosen who you want to be. You've not chosen a lot of the different aspects of your life. You have defaulted to your programming. And for better or worse, who you've come to know yourself to be, your system of thinking, is a haphazard construction. It's a collection of ideas that kind of a mishmash or a mishmash of different concepts, different ideas. Some of them are in conflict, some of them work together, and some of them don't work at all. At least not how they did when you first learned them. And this is how the mind generalizes. You take an aspect or an experience of your life that worked at one time in your life, and then you tend to generalize it and use it across the board. Anytime a similar situation comes up, you use the same internal mental strategy. Sometimes it works and sometimes it doesn't. But you say, I had the right intention. And that's why they say the road to hell is paved with good intentions. It's like you have a particular methodology, you have a path, you have an approach, and you have the right intention, but maybe your approach is not effective. And when you haven't gotten really clear about what you want or what you want to achieve, you might have an idea, but unless you've gotten really specific, you may do what Stephen Covey said, arrive at the top of the ladder of success only to realize that the ladder was leaning against the wrong wall all the time. And that was another outcome of this language model. It gave me specificity in my thinking. I got really specific, really accurate with my thoughts. Now, earlier I said one of the things that was unexpected about NLP is it gave me a vernacular, gave me a verbiage, a way of talking about my feelings in a new way. And what did that do? Well, it opened up my intuition. I realized that I had a lot of language, a lot of sensations in my body that I was not paying attention to because I had generalized them. They weren't specific enough But once I got specific about the different sensations, the different feelings, it gave me a real mastery or a handle to interpret and work with, utilize my intuitive guidance, your inner guidance. You all have it. We all have intuitive guidance. Most of us are not adept at listening effectively. And the result of that, of tapping into my intuition, it gave me a greater sense of certainty about being in the world. Gave me access to a whole new realm of information that was previously not available. It was off to the side. It was in the back room. But now it was front and center. I made better decisions. It improved my relationships. That was another aspect of NLP. I became a better communicator. I became a better lover because I could get out of my head and actually read the responses of the person I was with, and then utilize that information to create even more intimacy, even more connection. I like to think about NLP and my exposure to neuro-linguistic programming as adopting or reinstalling software for the brain. It was a whole new operating system, and it gave me an immense sense of power because we live our whole life in our head. And since we live our whole life in our head, every emotion, every experience is there. We don't live outside of our perception. And once you take control of your perceptions, once you take control of your thinking, you have ultimate power over your life. For me, there's definitely a demarcation in my life before NLP and life after NLP. Now, I'll be truthful, just learning NLP when I was 28 was not all there was to do. I went for the next certification, which was master level, and then I became a trainer in NLP. And what I didn't necessarily realize when I first learned neuro-linguistic programming is that I had this whole set of toolboxes and how I could use them in different ways, but the application was missing. And that was something that I had to work on as a coach, how I worked on myself over the last 30 plus years, if I'm counting. But learning how to apply the techniques, learn how to utilize the different ideas to transform your beliefs, to change your experience on a systematic basis makes a huge difference. A lot of people today have been trained in NLP. They don't necessarily know how to apply it to their life. And you might ask, why not? Well, again, all you know is all you know. And you live your whole life in your head, so there's a certain part of you that thinks you know what reality is. So you don't necessarily realize you have a problem until it shows up as a problem. Now, I believe in being proactive, and I've created a system for myself to proactively look for, limits in my thinking, limits in my being, and challenging those. Because for the most part, people are on autopilot, and for good reason. I think that's a good design. I think the universe, God, goddess, all that is, had the right thinking in making a lot of the aspects of our life automatic. But again, you're dependent upon your previous programming. Because if you had to rethink every situation, rethink every decision, regather all the information in order to make a decision, you'd hardly get dressed in the morning because you'd be weighing all the possibilities, there's just too much information. And so we relegate a lot of our being, a lot of our living to our other than conscious mind. And our other than conscious mind is more than adept and powerful to do the job, as long as you program it right. Now, there's one thing that I do have to say. There's a little warning attached to this. A lot of people are NLPers, when they learn NLP and they learn that language model and getting more specific and they start utilizing or using it on their friends, they tend to lose their friends. And why is that? Well, because a lot of people's thinking has been relegated or turned over to their other than conscious mind, and they're not in rapport with their unconscious. And so when a NLPer or someone that has learned this language model starts applying it without any modification, start applying it to their friends, it makes them feel uncomfortable because suddenly they have to explain their unconscious process, which they don't necessarily have access to, and it's uncomfortable. And so over the years, I've actually learned to modify this, and it seems very natural. I can put people at ease in gathering deeper and deeper information. And in that regard, I've learned to take a blunt tool and apply a little bit of mastery and soften the application. and still get what I want. And I have lots of friends. A lot of people seem to love me. But then there's a few people where I can actually call bullshit on, and they tend to go somewhere else because they're trying to manipulate the system. They're not providing all the information. So now, knowing that you live your whole life in your head, I have some questions for you. If what's currently showing up in your life, if you can look at the results of your relationships, the results of your satisfaction, how satisfied are you with life? Do you love your life? That is a reflection of your thinking. And if you can say, yes, I love my life, then kudos to you. You've got some good programming there. But if you think that you could use greater clarity in your life, greater drive, greater persistence, that you could develop more passion, feel things more deeply, that your relationships could be more intimate, that you could be better, that there's so much that you have left untapped, then you might want to investigate NLP. You might want to access an owner's manual on running your brain. Now, today, the cost of getting certified in NLP, or at least a practitioner level, which is the foundational level, and gives you a lot of the tools, all the tools you really need, it's between $3,000 and $5,000. When I first did it, the 21-day intensive, and I had to go, it was a residential program, airfare and all that, it came to about $8,000. And I made that decision on a dime in an instant. I just decided, I just knew that I needed to get involved in this. And I put myself in it. And I admit, because I didn't have a focused application on the front end of it, I had a lot of tools, but I didn't know how to apply them. Shortly after that, I got involved as a coach. I started assisting other people, working with other people, because I wanted to learn the application process. So I created a practice. I opened up an office. Even though I had a full-time job, I saw people in the evenings and on the weekends because it was a practice. And at that time, I didn't call it a coaching practice because coaching wasn't necessarily on the radar for a lot of people. Coaching wasn't really a thing yet. And I am dating myself. Now, just about everybody on the street corner is a coach. And on that token, there's also a lot of different NLP certification programs. Not all of them are created equal. And so when you find an instructor, you really want to make sure that they know what they're talking about. They've done their work. They have experience in teaching. They have experience in utilizing the techniques. Today, it's actually hard for me to differentiate my own thinking from an actual NLP practice that I picked up, or NLP technique, because it's so integrated in my way of being. Now, to assist you, if you're interested in learning NLP, I'm putting an NLP practitioner course in my membership program, the NEXUS of Transformation. I'm actually reorienting all the courses, the direction of the NEXUS, as I affectionately call it, to be oriented around your transformation, around mind mastery, subconscious mind mastery. I have a course on subconscious mind mastery. I have a badass manifester course that's in there. There'll be the NLP course, and when I complete the subpersonality program that I've been working on for the last year, that will be in there as well. And then I have the intuition course, because like I've said, I opened up my intuition. I could be considered a psychic in many regards today. I do readings for people. I don't do public readings, so don't send me any request. I was charging $400 a session, and people were booking with me, but they weren't following the advice. They weren't following the coaching, and so I just saw it as, I guess, unfulfilling for me. I would rather you have the tools and utilize the toolbox, that you be your own psychic, you have your own intuition, and utilizing the NLP techniques that I've put in that program, you actually learn how to trust your intuition, talk to your body, actually identify all the different signals, intuitive signals. Now, if you listen to the podcast from the beginning to the end, all 380 some episodes, there's a lot of the ideas included in those episodes. But if you want a systematic approach, you want a systematic process, it's in the NEXUS. So like I said, back in 1988, that year was transformational. You know, you can change fast, but if you commit a year, you can literally transform the rest of your life, transform every aspect of your life, your relationships, your business, your career. You can make more money. That was another side benefit. I made more money as an NLP practitioner. Not just utilizing NLP, I applied aspects of NLP to different business processes, management processes, how I did my job, how I interacted with my bosses, how I interacted with my peers. It impacted everything. And like I said, there was life before NLP and life after NLP. Now, the good news is I'm relaunching the NEXUS on July 4th, 2024. And if you're listening to this in real time, I have some added benefits available to you right now if you get involved right away today or in the very near future. Now, let's say that you listen to this after July 4th and you want to get involved. You'll still have the benefits. It'll still be profound transformation. And whether you're listening to this now or you're listening to this later, consider it to be the most divine timing for you. But let's say that you don't want to become certified in NLP. You don't want to have access to that software for your brain. How can you utilize this information that I live my whole life in my head? Well, this becomes your meditation. How am I creating this? What is my role in this? When you see aspects in another person or in a relationship, a lot of people say, my relationship is missing something. Well, your relationship is missing something because you're missing it. You didn't bring it to the relationship. You didn't make it as a condition for your relationship. And so you're creating the missing. You see, you have the power. And this goes into the Badass Manifestor course. Badass is when you take on the attitude that you create everything. But that's only available in the membership, in the NEXUS. But if you're a do-it-yourselfer, it'll take you longer, but there's profound value in sitting with yourself and examining your life. How am I creating this situation? What has been my role? And again, your ultimate freedom is your ability to choose your response. Nobody can take that away. If you're saying that you have no freedom, you're just not taking responsibility for your life yet. But remember, the quality of your thinking is the quality of your questions. And so if you take a look at the results you're currently generating in your life and you want something different, or what's showing up is less than satisfying or disturbing, as you meditate on it and you contemplate about it, again, what is my role in this? How am I creating this? You want to take responsibility. You don't want to point fingers at somebody else, because that does not empower you. Remember, you get to choose. So how are you choosing this? What does it satisfy? What's your motivation? And you might come up with, it was based on my programming. Well, you have faulty programming. You get to release it. You get to let go of it and ask yourself, what new idea, what new mindset, what new belief, as I adopt it, would make this go away? I just saw a post on Facebook, and they said the worst thing is when you do something or make a decision and it hurts somebody else. How do you be with that? Well, let's apply a little NLP with this. What makes it the worst thing compared to what? How is it that you're taking responsibility for another person's feelings? Can you choose another person's feelings for them? Were you lying? Did you misrepresent yourself? Now, if you did that and it hurt somebody else's feelings, then you could be responsible or have at least a role in it. But ultimately, the other person, aren't they responsible for how they respond? You don't want to choose all their responses for everything that occurs in their life. You know, you have a hard enough time doing that for yourself, and you're going to take that on for somebody else. But a lot of people, they play this role that they can affect or they can control somebody else's feelings. Well, that's not possible. It's not your domain. It's not your dominion. You're only responsible for choosing your own response. Would you want someone choosing your response for you? So again, let's look at this statement, the worst thing. That's an invalid statement. It's not true. It's not the worst thing. There are things that are far worse. It's uncomfortable. That's accurate. And so by getting more specific, we start tuning into what's actually going on. If it's the worst thing, if it's devastating, that's a whole experience of life that's not conducive to being empowered. Well, my friend, I just looked at the clock and I realized in 20 minutes, or 15 minutes, I have a client call and I'll be working with someone one-on-one. If you want to get happily involved in the NEXUS, go to yesdaniel.com and investigate my current offer. Be in the mindset that you're going to commit an entire year to your life. That you're actually going to learn how to master your thinking, master your emotions, because you get to choose it. You'll be in the driver's seat. If you could commit for a year, if you're not ready to commit for a year to your life, then don't even look. Don't even look, because it's not going to be worth your time. But I guarantee that if you commit a year we're going to transform every aspect of your life. It's going to be an ongoing conversation. I'm going to be in there on a regular basis. You get to talk to me. You'll get to ask me questions. I am so excited about this new offering, this new approach of empowerment. I want to be there with you. So, like I said, I have to go. Until next time, check out the offering at yesdaniel.com. Until next time, this is your friend and host, Daniel Danovi, urging you to follow your bliss. Live your life from inner signals. Be inner directed as you engage in the epic adventure.